Greetings YouTube, this is Boss Jinbei here, bringing you my first One Piece theory video. I want to discuss a potential outcome for a plotline that most, if not almost all, in the One Piece community and theory community specifically have been writing off, and that is a plotline involving Momonosuke and his upcoming execution. Most people seem to be writing this off as a way to get the focus into one place in the story, for it to be a catalyst for the major Marineford-esque battle or war many expect to occur in Wano. The general consensus seems to be that Momo will likely be saved from the execution at the last minute, by Raid Suit Sanji perhaps, or that when time is almost up, the major clashes will erupt with the resistance storming the stage to save him, similarly to what occurred with Ace. I actually think that there is a larger than expected chance that Momo could actually be executed here, or more exactly, that he could die during this sequence and raid on Onigashima. I think that Oda choosing to do so would ramp up the emotions and stakes of Wano, would provide a bittersweet but understandable conclusion for Momo's own character arc, and would be a reason for the Wano Arc to extend as long as many expect it may. This theory has gained even more evidence on a couple fronts with the introduction of Yamato and the information we learned about his character in Chapter 984. This will be your spoiler warning as I will be discussing information from this chapter. First off, the emotions. Many people feel that the emotional weight of the Wano arc has been lacking when compared to many of the other great arcs in One Piece, especially for the emotional investment from the Straw Hats in particular. Yes, we do have emotional connections to what is going on with the Scabbards and Momo, as well as some of the other characters we have met in Wano like Shinobu, Otama, Otoko, etc. But we have those in the major arcs as well, such as with Rebecca or Shirahoshi, or even someone like Iceberg. But in many of the best arcs, the Straw Hats have an emotional investment and involvement in the island they're on. In Enies Lobby, we had to rescue Robin. Whole Cake Island was Sanji's additional backstory and winning him back. Arlong Park was saving Nami and her island, and so on. But in Wano, we have very little personal connection to the story for our characters outside of their connection to Momo and the Scabbards. The only other connection on a personal level so far is that Ace was here previously, and his relationship with Tama. This plot thread is likely to be expanded upon in future chapters with, hopefully, an additional Ace flashback. Momonosuke, a character who has traveled with our crew for months in story and hundreds of chapters in reality, dying here would present an emotional gut punch to the crew unlike anything they had experienced since Sabaody and the time skip. Momonosuke either being executed or dying shortly after being freed here would also be a great way for Oda to conclude Momonosuke's story and character arc. Many people are unsure what to make of Momo's character and his purpose or future within the story. There are speculations as to his potential future plot lines, but for each of these there is another character or characters who may fulfill such a role, except for the role of a character death near the crew that would ramp up the emotional investment. The only other character even close that is relevant in the story at this point, whose death would have a major impact, other than an actual Straw Hat, would maybe be Kinemon. Many people think Momo may join the crew after Wano as a cabin boy or apprentice. This is likely the most common theory at this point, although not necessarily the most popular or well-liked. He has traveled with the crew for a long time in story now, longer than Vivi and Kaoru did, and they are considered honorary Straw Hats. And given the presence of Buggy and Shanks in the Odin flashback, many view that as a potential foreshadowing of a younger character such as Momo joining the crew. However, we have already had Jinbei join the crew officially while in Wano, so we likely will only gain one more Straw Hat from the Wano arc, if any. Carrot is considered the likely frontrunner for this position. Some have considered Kinemon a potential candidate, or even someone like Tama as a candidate for an apprentice or deckhand in a similar vein to Momo. And now with the introduction of Yamato, we have a growing #Yamato for Nakama movement. Shout out to YouTuber O'Hara. There are even outside the ballpark candidates whose names are thrown around, such as Karibo, Caesar, or even Queen. With so many other viable and arguably not so viable candidates for the next Straw Hat out there, the odds of Momo's story continuing with him officially joining the crew seem less and less likely. The next obvious storyline most considered for Momo is for him to become the next shogun of Wano. Some think he may fulfill this role in his young age, or have a steward such as Kinemon or his sister even step into that role until he comes of age. Others have even suggested a theory that with Shinobu's ripe or mature fruit, that she may age Momo forward in time to an age, perhaps his proper age of 28, where he can fight in the upcoming battle and compete, and that he could then rule Wano from that age forward. However, even in doing so to the age of 28 would not provide him with the experience or likely maturity that should come along with that age. Furthermore, many speculate that with some of the themes of Wano that have been hinted at throughout the story regarding gender roles and identity, such as with Kiku, Izo, now Yamato, and even previously with Kuina and her relationship to Wano through her father, Hiyori assuming the role of shogun would have additional narrative weight and impact. This can be done both if Momo does in fact end up joining the Straw Hats, or as in my theory, if he dies here at the raid on Onigashima. The other major plot thread or role that many would expect from Momo and would argue as a reason why he should not die here is an extension of the idea that he would become a shogun eventually, and that is the theme throughout One Piece of inherited will, specifically for Momo to carry out Oden's will of protecting Wano and opening the borders. However, this too can be seen in Hiyori even from the small parts we have witnessed of her. For example, she, like Oden, wore a false face to the public while doing her part to help the citizens of Wano. Furthermore, this is yet another reason why I believe the introduction of Yamato into the story really threatens Momo's role moving forward. Even from just the 2 chapters so far that he has been introduced in, he obviously and wholeheartedly supports Oden and emulates him and his vision for Wano. And also, he functionally inherited Oden's will through picking up his logbook at some point and considering it his Bible. Correct me if I am wrong, but the only time in the story that I can think of where 2 characters inherited the will of their parental figure or idol was in the case of Iceberg and Frankie inheriting Tom's will, or different aspects of Tom's will. And while I think the symbolism of Oden and Kaido's sons working together to fulfill Oden's will could be interesting, I personally don't see Oda letting both characters move forward in the story. And it would be kind of weird to introduce Yamato only to kill him off shortly thereafter. The final main reason I see for Momo's potential death here is more of a meta view of the narrative and the Wano arc as a whole. We are currently 75 chapters into the arc officially at this point, and many believe we are approaching the apex or climax of the arc, the major battle, which would probably put the arc ending at somewhere around 125 chapters or so. I am in the camp of readers that thinks the Wano arc as a whole is going to be massive. I personally think closer to 170 chapters. I agree with YouTuber Mr. Morge in that many of his theories that the Alliance suffers a defeat here in the raid on Onigashima. A defeat here that involves Momo dying would propel the story forward in many different ways. It would extend the arc as a whole, helping give it the weight to pay off the hundreds of chapters of buildup we have had. As previously stated, it would up the emotional investment for our crew, which could lead to incentive for major improvements or strength gains. We are nearing the end of One Piece in the next 5 to 7 years most likely, and as strong as Luffy and the Monster Quartet are now, the crew as a whole are not on the same level across the board as one would expect they have to be going into the final stages of the story. Many think the Straw Hats are going to match up 1v1 versus Blackbeard's crew in the final battle, or one of the final battles. And some think that Zoro, Sanji, and now perhaps Jinbei may be matching up 1v1 against the Admirals at some point, with Luffy perhaps facing Akainu. While some or all of these scenarios may not play out how we imagine, these matchups are fundamentally impossible at this time with the level the crew is currently at now, and they will need some motive or incentive, outside of another time skip, to level up again. Avenging Momo would provide that. Additionally, regarding the narrative aspect of this portion of the theory, the Wano arc is clearly structured similarly to a 5-act kabuki play. We have been in Act 3 for a while now, since just before the start of the Oden flashback. Act 3 of kabuki plays often involve a tragedy or a moment of great emotion, and while I personally love the Oden flashback, it being the emotionally tragic or payoff of the act does not seem to fit its placement at the beginning of the act. A Momonosuke death in the near future would provide just such a tragedy. Also, Yamato was just introduced in the arc and seems likely to be a major character moving forward. The only real major arc characters revealed so late into an arc that I can think of were Katakuri, who was introduced with about 40 chapters left in Whole Cake, so about the halfway point, or ironically, Momonosuke, making his appearance with only about 15 or so chapters left in Punk Hazard. The final point I want to make, echoing many of the previous sentiments, again involves the introduction of Yamato into the story and the potential story threads his involvement has now opened up. Yamato's introduction has brought with it further mention of Ace, and we are likely to get more Ace moments and hopefully a flashback here soon. The death of Ace was Luffy's biggest loss in the story, especially combined with having just lost his crew. It crippled Luffy for a time, and he had to work to build himself back up to a point where he could protect his crew and those he cares about, and actually make an impact in the new world. Ace being brought back into the story here, in my opinion, will provide parallels and foreshadowing for Momo's death, especially with the similar symbolism of Momo waiting to be executed for the sins of his father. I actually think Momo will unleash Conqueror's Haki here to save himself, but will ultimately die somehow. And I see his death as a potential springboard for Luffy to finally understand what he needs to do to protect his crew and those he cares about, and will be the catalyst for his final growth in strength and as a captain within the story. The one major plot thread involving Momo that does give me trouble with this theory at this point is the voice of all things that both he and Luffy have to some different degrees. Momo could give orders to Zunisha, something that Luffy and apparently not even Roger or Odin could do. And that is something that is uniquely Momo's within the story, although it is very similar to Shirahoshi's power as Poseidon, although obviously hers involves commanding the Sea Kings. I'm not sure what his death here could mean for this aspect of the story, if this is perhaps an ability that Luffy could unlock as an extension of Conqueror's Haki that Momo was simply born with, or if it's something completely different and unique to Momo. However, I am not sure this one plot thread is enough in my mind to outweigh the other evidence and flags I see for Momo's upcoming potential death. Anyways, these have been my thoughts on the potential death flags for Momo I have seen in the story up to this point, and why I think this storyline is being slept on by so many in the community. But please, give me your thoughts on if you think this theory makes any sense at all, or why you think I am way off base. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.